done. And so we're just delighted to have you both here to share your knowledge and experience and to answer our questions and to help us figure out what we need to do to get more social support. I watched your video, Al, and so I know the social license is important, as well as what we can do to support the rights of nature, and how to get that whole theme going as well. And just how you built your successful strength to oppose the mine that's worked so far. So where would you like to start?
Do you want me to start, or do you want
Sure,
Dale?
sure, either one.
The project has been in contention for the past 18 years. I've been working very actively with the coalition since its beginning, the past 5 years. But before that, I was also involved in some of the first meetings in the local high school when the project was first proposed, and no one had heard of very few people had heard of the idea of acid mine drainage at that point. And that was the beginning of the first local organized opposition, which was called the Front 40, in contrast to the Back 40 mining company project. And so the Front 40 sort of paved the way for a lot of the public education and the close attention to the permitting process that allowed the continual delay of the permitting process because of the involvement of the local people in raising objections to the project and publishing letters in the local paper, taking out ads in the local paper, exposing the misinformation and the outright lying of the mining companies. One of the critical turning points in that early period was a withdrawal of Hudbay Minerals because the original venture was a joint venture between a junior mining company called Aquila Resources, which didn't have the finances for the project, and Hudbay Minerals, which was a major Canadian mining company that did have the financing. But because they were also involved in very controversial human rights violations in a nickel mine in Guatemala that is in fact still ongoing in Canadian courts, they withdrew from the project in 2011. And for several years, the project was on hold. No one knew what the status of the project was. And then all of a sudden in 2015, Aquila Resources announced that they were going ahead with the project, and that was the beginning of the organizing for the coalition to save the Menominee River, and also the more active involvement of the Menominee tribe at the same time. But the basic battle plan for the opposition from the very beginning was close review and critique of every aspect of the permitting process and the involvement of citizens at every public hearing, the publication of letters to the editor explaining the reasons why the local community was opposed to the project, and the very strong voice of the Menominee tribe in asserting its treaty rights to the area, given the fact that the actual mine site is the historic homelands of the tribe going back 10,000 years. And over the course of years, well, particularly from 2015 until the lawsuit challenging the wetlands permit, there was an active psychological warfare operation on both the part of the mining company to convince people that this was a done deal, and also the regulatory agency, the Department of Environmental Quality, who routinely made it difficult, if not impossible, for citizens to to speak at public hearings. They continually shortened the period where people could speak,
Wow.
the issues that they could speak about. They disrespected the tribal chair of the Menominee tribe, cut her off in mid-sentence because she didn't meet the time limit that was arbitrarily imposed by the hearing examiner. And when people testified, they were ridiculed by the regulators, who told a lot of the citizens that their concerns could not be taken seriously because they were not scientific experts. And the only criteria that would be considered in the decision-making process would be technical and scientific criteria that met the letter of the law. And regardless of what people felt about the mine, if the project met the letter of the law, the regulatory agency had no choice but to issue a permit. And of course, all this was absolute and utter nonsense, which was revealed when the Department of Environmental Quality approved a wetland permit that ignored the scientific evidence of their own staff. In other words, all that hogwash about not taking into account political considerations was in fact a camouflage for the outright collusion between the Department of Environmental Quality and the mining company, at least the upper echelon, not the scientific staff. And that became the basis for the lawsuit that the coalition filed in 2018, challenging the permit on the basis that the regulatory agency's scientific staff had recommended against the permit and were overridden by the agency director. And once that case was brought to the administrative law judge, the evidence was overwhelming, and the administrative law judge ruled in January of 2021 that the permit should be overturned because the information that was available to the regulatory agency was insufficient to make a determination about the extent of the wetland destruction that would occur if the mine were permitted. And once that occurred, we had a domino effect where the wetland information was so integral to the other permits that all the other permits came under question. And when they did, the company essentially withdrew those permits and said, we're going to start the whole process all over again. But at that point, it was too late because they had already exhausted all of their finances and they were on the verge of bankruptcy. So that's a very condensed version of how we got to this point. And Dale might want to fill in a lot of the details about the lawsuit and how the coalition mobilized local resources to do that.
Sure, I can step in here. Dr. Gedicks, thank you. First thing I want to say is thank you for the opportunity to be here. And Dr. Gedicks has basically been our mentor. He is a world of information on sulfide mining. We go to him with many questions, and if he doesn't have the answer, he'll find it for you. He's been great. The coalition to save the Menominee River. My wife and I are actually musicians from Nashville, Tennessee. And when we retired, we moved up here and built our retirement home, and we're only about a quarter mile from the Menominee River. And I heard about this threat of a sulfide mine on the Menominee River. And so we went to a few little cell groups, and they're basically little grassroots organizations and they get together and they talk about their plight of, no, we don't want the mine. My family has lived here for 100 years. Our connection to the river is very vast and deep, but they had no direction. And my wife and I talked about it, and we thought, well, maybe we can supply a direction to unify these grassroots organizations and bring them under one umbrella to where we can have more people, more power, a bigger voice. And so my wife and I actually borrowed $2,000 from our home equity loan, and we started the Coalition to Save the Menominee River Incorporated. We did incorporate right away. So we are a registered 501c3. And the biggest thing that we found, our biggest challenge, was education and advocacy. To educate the people on the dangers of this type of a mine is astronomical. It's the biggest challenge that you folks are going to face, is educating the public. And one of the things, we were in personal contact with Ron Hendrickson and Carol, the ones that actually started the Front 40, which and they were very instrumental in leading us and guiding us in the what to do and what not to do. But what we ended up, I think the biggest challenge was, as I mentioned, educating. But the other thing is that I felt a real need to employ a top-notch environmental attorney. And we were able to secure, I believe, one of the best environmental attorneys in the state of Wisconsin. Since then, he has brought on 2 of his attorney partners within their firm. And our attorney is based in Green Bay, Wisconsin. His partner is based in Milwaukee. And then they also have an associate attorney that works with them, and she is also based in Green Bay. But along with that, attorneys are extremely expensive. And the biggest thing is to get the capital that you need on an annual basis to make this happen. So our group conducted everything. We conducted auctions, we did garage sales, we did raffles. We were licensed by the state of Wisconsin to conduct raffles. We did that, and we did everything you can think of to raise money. We held a water celebration last July that drew well over 300 people. We had music performers. We had news media invited. It's anything you can think of to get the word out. And we've been very blessed. Our group operates solely with volunteers. We don't have one paid person on the roster. So all of the money that is given to us by donations, grants, we apply for every grant that we can think of. And we've been fortunate to get a few, and that all helps. But the biggest challenge is raising enough capital to fight the fight that you folks are facing right now. One of the things that I can suggest to get the word out, we bought 1,000 yard signs, and we up and down the Menominee River. There's a lot of them posted where you can see them from the water, so the fishermen see them. We've got them on the highways, and if you want to write this number, or tell you what, just contact me, Lynn, if you're interested in yard signs, because we buy them from a company out of Texas. They do great graphic work, and they're very good. I recommend them highly, but I'll give you all the information. And but the biggest challenge, as I mentioned, is advocacy. Is take the opportunity to talk to Lions clubs, fishing clubs, sportsmen's clubs, Elks Club, whoever will give you a microphone and a podium, you go for it. And a couple of things, let me talk about the lawsuit. When we decided to file suit against Eagle, which is the permitting agency for the state of Michigan, we were not in it alone. We partnered, well, we didn't partner. We filed and Earth Justice. Also, you might want to be in touch with those folks. Earth Justice also filed a similar suit on the wetlands issuance of the permit. And also we had an adjacent landowner, Tom Borner. He and his family own 380 acres right next to the proposed mine site. And they've owned that land, I believe, close to 100 years. So he was instrumental as well. So the three of us were all three of us were filing the suit against the state of Michigan. And as Dr. Gedicks said earlier, the administrative law judge did indeed rule in our favor that the wetlands permit was erroneously granted. So you have to almost explore every possible little nook and cranny that you can to wedge any kind of doubt or roadblock that you can put in front of this movement. Right now, because of the COVID condition, our fundraising has really been challenged because we're used to holding large events where we might attract upwards of 500, 600 people. And right now it's definitely challenged because of the pandemic that we're in. So we do rely on grants. So I suggest that you can actually Google grants for 501c3 nonprofits. And I'm sure some, especially in the environmental field, there's lots of grants out there.
I was just wondering whether Al Gedicks could has any information on the sources of grants that was gotten to work on this.
I'm back.
Oh,
I'm sorry. My Wi-Fi is horrible here. As I mentioned earlier, Dr. Gedicks and I were laughing at our webinar this morning about having to feed the squirrel more peanuts in the little cage that powers our Wi-Fi, and I guess I'm peanuts. One of the places you might check into is the Western Mining Action Network, WMAN. They've been very good to us. Western Mining Action Network.
Also, Indigenous Environmental Network.
And not being so familiar with Minnesota, I'm sure there are larger environmental groups that are already established in the state of Minnesota. You might want to consult with them to see who they rely on for grants. I know the Boundary Waters, they've been fighting this fight for a long time, and they might be able to help.
I
There's
liked
also
your, go ahead,
Freshwater
sorry.
Future.
I'm sorry?
Dale, you've gotten some grants from Freshwater Future as well, right?
Yes, Freshwater Future is based in Michigan. I don't know if they give grants out of state. I don't know if they do or not, but you might want to check them out. It's called Freshwater Future, and they're located in Petoskey, Michigan. Petoskey, Petoskey, Michigan. And you can Google them and they'll come up. But the biggest,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
I was just curious how soon you started getting people involved. How often were you meeting? Like, were you having monthly meetings? And when did you start working with the yard signs and the letters to the editors of the local newspapers?
Almost immediately.
Okay.
We selected the first Thursday of every month is when our coalition meeting takes place. And of course, you know, we'd meet at the town hall, and and then we moved it into Marinette, Wisconsin, which gave us a little more room. But nowadays, you almost have to have, if you do meet in person, you almost have to have a Zoom connection to offer for other people too. It's just the time, a sign of the times.
What was on your yard signs?
We actually developed a logo,
Yeah.
and it basically, well, our name says it all: Coalition to Save the Menominee River. And then it had our email address and our website address.
Okay.
So you could go to the website and get more information. The other thing I would suggest is on your website is to set up a PayPal button. So,
Okay.
so you can actually accept donations that would be electronically deposited into your bank account.
Sure. Did you approach homeowner? How did you reach out to homeowners and get them on board with what you were doing?
Well, I guess in our situation, because Menominee River is a border waters between Michigan and Wisconsin, and of course, each side has a river road, and all of the people that live on River Road have frontage on the Menominee River. So, you know, we started there. We had 2 girls in our group that just took a bunch of signs. We sell our signs for $5.
Okay.
Yep, they cost us about, well, with the wires, and I'll have to describe how to do that. They sell the yard sign stands, but what we do is we go to Menards. If you have a Menards or a Lowe's or a Home Depot, and we get 4-inch masonry ladders. They come in 10-foot sections, and you simply cut your ladders in, well, so it looks like an H. So your top part of your H goes up into the corrugated plastic. The bottom part of your H goes in the ground.
Yeah.
And it's considerably cheaper than, and we've had really good luck with it. But I think they cost us, with the wires, I'm guessing $4, $3.89, $3.90. If you buy them in bulk, we buy 500 signs at a time. So you're looking at about $1,600 for 500 signs. And depending upon, you know, how you want to do it, maybe to get the word out quickly, you want to devise a logo with your website address and your email on it, and with a strong statement of your organization. Get this made on your yard sign, and maybe for the first, you know, depends on your financial situation, but maybe for the first 300 or so, you might want to just go and talk to landowners and see if you can put a sign up and tell them that you'll give them the first one, as long as they make sure that they keep one up there. When the snowplow knocks them over and tears them up, that they got to buy another one for $5.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
For both of you. What sort of story was the mining company telling, and the people who are, you know, for it? Like, what was your, what were you in opposition to in terms of that?
Okay. Of course, the proposed mine is west of Stevenson, Michigan. Stevenson, Michigan is a little bitty town. I grew up in this area. I graduated from Stevenson High School. So to me, this was extremely important. So I went to all the meetings. The mining companies came in and they said, "Oh, we can bring high-paying jobs. We can fix your schools. We can build new roads." And, you know, it was just whatever the public wanted to hear. They gave them all the ear candy, that they could possibly do it and entice them. And they sold millions and millions of dollars of their stock to my relatives, my friends, my neighbors.
Wow.
And they took all that money out of here. And I know of one lady that she worked her entire life at a paper mill. She cashed in her entire 401k plan and bought a kilo stock.
Wow.
And right now it's worth, I think, maybe 4 or 5 cents. And now they've transferred their interests to Gold Resources in Denver, Colorado. So our fight is going to start all over again. So I don't see any other way than just buckle down and get prepared for another go at it. But the nice thing is that we, in 5 years, we have gained the visibility of people all over. There's an organization called Meat Eaters, and they have their own YouTube channel. They came in and actually did a fishing trip up the Menominee River for smallmouth bass. And on the way, they saw all these signs on the river. And so they asked the guide, what's this all about? And the guide actually sponsors fishing trips up the Menominee River and employs 15 families, all from early spring to late fall, on these fishing trips. So he told them about it when this is called DOS Boats. I think it's DOSBOATS. If you go to YouTube and punch in DOS Boats Meat Eaters, you can watch the video. And you can go to our website. It's on our homepage and view it. And after that viewing, we receive donations from all over the United States.
Wow.
From Washington, Virginia, Florida, Texas, even a $20 donation from Australia. So, the power of the internet is massive. So if you can tap into these types of channels, it's amazing the response that you will get. We have in Chicago, we have a gentleman who is our Chicago coordinator, and he actually goes to all the fishing clubs and puts on presentations. And the fishing clubs of Chicago, they're amazing. They donate very, very well. And so, maybe you want to look at targeting a sports fishing club or whoever uses the waters that are going to be contaminated by a potential nickel mine. But anything that you can think of that gets the word out, and you don't have to talk too much to where it hits people right in the heart. They don't want your beautiful area or this beautiful area ruined by a short-lived mine that is going to leave its tracks for generations. People want to leave their legacy to their children, their grandchildren.
Right.
And you have to dwell on that as well, because I think that's very important. And believe me, we're not out of the woods yet. It's still a daily battle. We're fighting a situation now where the state of Michigan just granted Aquila Resources a mineral lease on 1,988 acres. So the whole thing is just like we're reliving the last 5 years over and over again. But one thing I would recommend is Dr. Gedicks has been so helpful for us. And I'm thankful for Ron and Carol Hendrickson. But if you can find a good expert in the field, and I would recommend Dr. Gedicks if he has the time, because he is a busy man. But also Google environmental attorneys. And I'll tell you what happened with me. I had no clue. I went and I Googled environmental attorneys, and this guy's name came up. So I called him and told him what I was interested in. And he said, you know what? You don't want me. He said, you need Ted Warpinski. And I said, oh, okay, thank you. So I called the next guy that came up on the Google, and I told him what we were doing. And he said, you know what? You don't need me. You need Ted Warpinski. So I took that as a good omen, and I called Mr. Warpinski, and we talked about it. And so he decided to take us on. But now, knowing that I had no idea, how we were going to raise enough money to pay this man, I had no idea how we were ever going to be able to move forward. And by the grace of God, it has been favorable for us, for the coalition, for the Menominee River. So,
well, you had a lot of very good ideas. I really liked a lot of what you shared with us, Dale. I had a question for you, Dr. Gedicks. In your video, you talked about the social license, and then you also talked about treating nature as nature having its own rights. And you mentioned in the video that the Native people had organized a walk for water. Would that be important in terms of building support and developing that whole messaging? And I wondered if you could talk more about that.
Yeah, actually, the social license to operate and rights of nature are complementary in the sense that both of them are attempts to circumvent and evade the overwhelming intimidation factor of regulatory agencies that want to convince the citizens that the only decision making that's relevant regarding a mine permit is the decision making of the state. And what the social license idea and rights of nature suggest is that grassroots organizing that mobilizes citizen opposition, and as Dale said, with a heavy dose of education and advocacy, can change the dynamic of regulatory agencies so that they are more responsive and less intimidating because they realize that they cannot conduct business in the shadows and only be accountable to the mining companies. And that is one of the reasons why people in the regulatory agency in Michigan were able to defy the leadership of the agency because they realized that at every public hearing, there was widespread not only opposition to the mine, but educated and articulate and scientific-based arguments against the project that reinforced the predilection of the scientists in the agencies to be extremely cautious and critical of the information that was coming to them from the paid consultants of the mining companies. So up and down the Menominee River, and Dale mentioned, this is a riverfront that extends from Upper Peninsula of Michigan all the way down to Green Bay. All those communities from the head of the Menominee River to Green Bay, where the Menominee River empties into Lake Michigan, all those counties passed resolutions against the mining project and reinforced the idea that this was not a done deal, and essentially expanded the public support or public opposition to the project. Same thing with the rights of nature. the tribal governments have legal powers that are far beyond those of county and town governments. They are sovereign entities. They have jurisdiction over both their lands and their waters. And when they articulate a position that the river has rights, even though those rights may not be recognized immediately, they are the basis for further legal challenges. And certainly the Menominee tribe has demonstrated through its legal arm of Earth Justice that those legal challenges can bring the issue into federal courts, where the issue of treaty rights and the off-reservation rights of tribes have legal standing that they do not have for ordinary or for non-Indian political organizations. So both those ideas, social license and rights of nature, are ways of challenging the authority of the state to have exclusive jurisdiction over a process which is inherently weighted in favor of granting the mining permit. And of course, this is a very important factor in overcoming the advantage of the companies who have widespread experience in psychological warfare, trying to convince people that there's no point in opposing the project because they have the law on their side. And both these ideas challenge those ideas. The other thing that social license does is that it allows grassroots groups to directly communicate with the financial interests behind the mining companies. So when Hudbay pulled out of the project in 2011, Aquila mobilized the resources of hedge funds in New York and Toronto that backed the project development. And those hedge funds are extremely susceptible to arguments that the project does not have the support of the local community because they are risking their investment in the project. And the more support that we can demonstrate in opposition to the project at the local level and all along the Menominee River, the greater the uncertainty that raises in the minds of investors. And eventually that resulted in Aquila's being unable to finance the further development of the project. They had to sell the whole project to another company. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
I've got a couple more comments here, Lynn, if I may.
Sure, please jump in.
Dr. Gedicks mentioned the bridge walks. We too, because the Menominee River is actually an interstate waterway. That's the border between Wisconsin and Michigan. So we've got quite a sizable interstate bridge. And right at the foot of the bridge, there's a picnic area called Stevenson Island. And we hold events there. And then of course we do a bridge walk as well. The bridge walk consists of a lot of our followers, our volunteers, carrying yard signs that we use, or a lot of them make up their own signs. But might I suggest, and I didn't invent this, but I come out of the music business in Nashville, Tennessee. There was a very successful artist manager, and his theory was that if his artist visited a town, excuse me, while that artist was in town, he would develop 3 other events to take place around that artist. So let's say that artist Bob went to the city. Well, he would not only book them to the venue for performance, but he would also maybe have them to go to a bookstore for signing, or go to a department store for a meet and greet, or a shake and howdy, or whatever. Now, and then you want to employ your media, newspapers, radio stations, TV stations, and tell them this is what's going to take place at each of these venues. And then, of course, do your best to get those people out to cover these events. So you get your bang for your buck. You get 3 times the bang for your buck than if the artist would just visit the one venue. So it's just a tip that I learned years ago from him. The other thing I was going to ask, you mentioned the water discharges that they're proposing. I don't know what system they're using to clean the water, but I would assume it would probably be something like a reverse osmosis
Yes.
program.
Yes,
Okay.
it's very expensive. Yes.
Yes. Well, what they did is the state of Michigan gave Aquila a permit to dump 1.52 million gallons of water, treated water, a day back into the Menominee River. Now, there's one thing about reverse osmosis is that it is sterile water, and river water is not sterile.
Right.
It has little organisms in it and little amoebas or whatever's in it, but it's not sterile water. So when you dump 1.52 million gallons of sterile water into a river channel, that is going to change the pH level of the water.
Yep.
And fish do not tolerate changes in pH. They have to be very stable. So if you have in your areas, if you have biologists or any type of research people that can document that type of changes that would take place in your waters because of sterile water entering into your water bodies, I think that's good ammunition.
That's good information. I didn't know that.
And when you mention tailings dams, what type of tailings dams are they recommending or are they proposing?
Well, what they're proposing is one that would be above ground.
Yeah.
That would be about, let's see, 82 feet high, 75 acres across a pile. And it would just be covered with a liner.
Okay.
They would also bury some of the sulfide tailings inside underground as well, make a paste with them.
So is it an upstream style of tailings dam?
They're on the highest ground of all the lakes around us. So the water would all flow down. And the lakes are all lower topography than where the mine would be.
And I don't think it's a good thing.
No, it's not.
One thing if you can study the application, and have they already submitted their applications?
They've only published a PEA. They have not gone for any permits yet.
Okay, find out what type of tailings dams that they are, because the upstream method, and Dr. David Chambers is probably the world-renowned expert on tailings dams. And he is located in, oh goodness, Montana. It's where they make Gibson guitars anyway. But Dr. David Chambers, and we can give you the information for him when you get that far along. The upstream method was proposed by Aquila Resources, and now under the Gold Resources regime, we haven't really seen it in print yet, but we are hearing that they are proposing the dry stack method.
Okay.
But bear in mind that if you're in your geographic area, if you're getting 30 inches of rain per year,
Right.
that rain is going to end up in that 75 acres.
Right.
If those walls get saturated, that's called liquefaction. And if they get saturated with rainfall. And I know if you're in Minnesota, you get a vast amount of snow as well.
Right.
And that's all going to, melt into that 75 acres. It's very conceivable that those walls would crumble and allow all of that tailings mess
Right.
to run downhill into your rivers and streams. So that's something to keep an eye out for as well.
Right.
This is Bob. If I could interrupt and make a comment about the tailings, I think Talon's talking about dry stacking. And, we don't have much experience with that in Minnesota, but one thing we do have is some experience what happens when these tailings actually dry out, and that experience with that Keewatin and taconite. I think if you Google Keewatin and taconite tailings dust, the story will pop up. And actually, they had a tailings pond at Keewatin and taconite, but they on the beaches they allowed the tailings to dry out, and they had tons of dust blowing into the town of Keewatin. It was so bad the mining company actually bought the town a street sweeper. And I think and then they let it happen again. And so when a mining company says, well, we're going to have dry tailings, we already have dry wind in the fall. Those tailings are all over. And so again, there's a possibility of that problem with Talon. And we have a long history. And while I'm speaking, I just mentioned as far as Minnesota's regulation of the mining industry, we have 6 operating iron mines right now. And I made a point this summer to take my little conductivity meter and sample water downstream of every one of those 6 operating plants. I found degraded water downstream of every one. Conductivity, I'm an electrician, so I'm interested in how good water carries electricity. Our surface waters are in Minnesota. The mines are all over 100 downstream someplace. And so Minnesota does not have a good record on tailings that are dried out or on water downstream. And we should be cautious in buying anything. And the other thing they're going to say is that they'll put the tailings back in the mine.
Right.
Before this coronavirus thing, Pat and I went to mining conferences and they talk about this. And the reason they're putting these tailings back in the mine, they mix it with cement. They want to support the roof of that mine so they can go in and mine out more ore. You have to have something there to support the roof. You can't take all the ore. So if you put some of the tailings back in with cement, you can support that roof, then you go after more ore. And I asked the young engineer, I said, as a practical matter, how much of your tailings do you put back in the mine? He said, 50-50. 50% of the tailings goes back in the mine. So until we actually see a real mine plan, we don't know how much of those tailings are going to go where. We can be pretty sure some of it's going to go back in the mine, but it's not because they want to be good stewards with their tailings. It's because they want to support that mine roof and go back in there and grab some more of their ore body. And with that, I'll turn it back.
A question, just a clarification. This nickel that they have discovered, that is embedded in a sulfide ore body?
Yes, it is. This definitely a sulfide ore body, and pretty high sulfides. The percentage is
very
well up
high.
there. Yeah. So it's not, we're not going to get a free ride on the sulfides on this one. We're going to have to deal with sulfides in this
Yes,
wild rice country.
absolutely. How about lead? Did they also discover vast amounts of lead?
I haven't heard that mentioned. Dale, another question for you. So how many activities, events did you have during a year as you got started?
Well, now this is taking into consideration garage sales, events. We normally had a spring large event and a fall large event,
Okay.
to where we would draw somewhere between 300 to 350 people in a, we had it at a big supper club where you'd normally book a wedding. And we charged $10 at the door for people to get in. And then once they're in, we conducted silent auctions. We conducted raffles, whatever you can think of.
Wow.
But it was just a good community thing to bring people together.
Yeah.
But anything you can think of to raise money. You know, a lot of times the volunteers will ask me, so, well, what other ideas can we come up with? I said, hey, you could go door to door and just ask for donations, pure and simple. Say, this is what we're fighting. And when you sell yard signs, and if you get somebody that will pay $5 for a yard sign, he's guaranteed to give a donation because he's got one of your signs in his yard.
Right.
So you can just go back to them and say, you know, we're appealing, you know, to pay our attorneys, you know, we need whatever you can afford. And once you develop that base, then you know, things get a little easier.
And then I imagine you also maybe had a table at different town festivales
Oh,
during
yes.
the warm weather, right?
Absolutely. Any, like the county fair, we're involved there. We're any place you can set up a table and give out brochures. Brochures are something, of course, that's a giveaway. You're not going to charge for those.
Right.
But you definitely we use a trifold brochure. Normally ours was just black ink on white paper. This past batch, we did go to a little color. They're a little more expensive, but they're a little classier.
Yeah.
You know, maybe in our conversation, Lynn, I can send you a couple brochures just to give you an idea of what we think.
I'd be interested.
Yeah. You mentioned also that the company, this Talon company, is out of the USA. We dealt with the same scenario with Aquila Resources. They were based in Toronto, Canada. And that was always the fearful thing of dealing with an out of the country company, that they would come in, destroy the land, claim bankruptcy, and disappear.
Yes.
Well, they didn't get a chance to destroy the land, but they disappeared anyway because they went broke. The latest tally that I saw was that they went through $124 million.
Wow.
And some of these people, you know, at the helm, they were drawing at well over six figures, you know, of salary during this tenure, if you will. So they paid themselves very well.
Out of curiosity, in what way did you reach out to Dr. Gedicks? When would you contact him, and what kinds of questions did you have him answer? And
Dr. Gedicks was already working with Ron and Carol Hendrickson.
okay.
When we came along with the Front 40. And so I like to think that we inherited him. But I think he inherited us. Another thing that Dr. Gedicks does is he hosts a webinar every 2 weeks to where we have leaders of environmental organizations all the way across the Upper Peninsula, the state of Wisconsin, and everybody. He gives everyone a chance to go around and saying, "What's going on? What are you doing? What are your concerns right now?" And we try to work as a unit so that everybody's on the same page, and each organization doesn't feel like you're hanging out there by yourself. So
is that something we can join or participate in?
That's up to Dr. Gedicks.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. The more interchange between various campaigns, the richer the development of strategic thinking.
Okay.
And I mean, this particular, event here is, just scratching the surface of all the experience of the coalition. And there's a lot more that, that can be learned by an ongoing dialogue.
Yes, yes.
Something else that we've recently gotten into, of course, as the coalition grew, we got into a merchandise program of T-shirts, ball caps, bumper stickers, that type of thing. And just recently, this past year, we were able to actually put this on our website. So now a person can go to our website, buy a T-shirt, use their, God bless you. Use their credit card and buy a T-shirt or a ball cap, and we have a fulfillment officer to send that merchandise out. So this is just our first year of being on the web with that.
Right. Well, we could certainly add a shopping cart to our website, and I had already envisioned T-shirts and baseball caps. But we do have a logo. I was curious about your messaging on those signs. Did you have any particular wording other than the logo and the website and the email address?
Well, see, our logo is Save Coalition to Save the Menominee River.
Right.
So that in itself pretty much
says it.
It says what we're all about. Okay. And then down the bottom we have the I think, I don't know, I'm sure that's on our website if you want to go to our website and look at it.
Yeah, I'll take a look.
Yeah. And another thing, I don't know, are you all set up with your website?
We have two, yes.
Oh.
We do. One is the Tamarack Water Alliance, that's our name. And the other one is tamarackmine.org. You mentioned that there was another group in Duluth that you thought had formed recently in regards to a mine. Do you think it's this mine or something else?
Oh, you know what, Dr. Gedicks, that's right. We sat in on a webinar with, oh my goodness.
Duluth Clean Water.
It's called Duluth Clean Water?
Duluth for Clean Water. Clean Water.
Yeah, they're organizing around the Polymet mine.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They're because Duluth is downstream.
We've got a gentleman that he and his family are very good contributors, and he always signs his checks. We all live downstream. And if you think about it, I don't care where you live, you're downstream from somewhere.
Right.
We all live downstream.
Most controversial mine in Wisconsin in the last decade was the Grandin mine next to the Wolf River and just upstream from the Mole Lake, Sikagan, Ojibwa Reservation. And after they achieved water quality authority from the Environmental Protection Agency in the early 2000s, that was a dramatic turning point for the mining company, who now had to meet the discharge standards from the upstream mine that would have affected the wild rice on the Mole Lake Reservation. And the discharge standards were essentially non-degradation, which would have meant that they would have to have no pollution impact on the wild rice, which they could not have possibly met. And that was the beginning of the withdrawal of the investment in the mine and the eventual sale of the property from the mining company to the Mole Lake and the Potawatomi tribe. So It wasn't that they not only defeated the mine, but they acquired the mineral rights to the area and declared the area a permanent conservation zone so that it can never be developed as a mining project.
That's a very successful story.
that was a 28-year battle.
Wow.
But it was a decisive defeat. And I don't know anywhere else in the world where a tribal community in alliance with environmental groups around the mine or all around the Wolf River not only have defeated a world-class mining company like Exxon and Rio Algom, but have also secured the mineral rights so that mining companies could not ever come back.
Does anyone else have other questions? It's been very, very helpful. Dale and Al Gedicks, really very helpful.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh,
Thank
it's
you.
wonderful.
Yeah, and I hope we can keep in touch as we move along here, because there were a number of things you said that I'm gonna go and take a look at the examples that you shared, and we may come with questions or things like that. And I would love to be able to keep in touch.
The
I'll
Western,
definitely send out an invitation to the next Zoom meeting, which would be in late January.
okay. Thank you ever so much, Dale and Al.
Yeah, thank
My
you.
pleasure.